WWE's presentation of the Fastlane pay-per-view this past February, there seemed to be one universal conclusion among all the critics. That Fastlane was a terrible name for a pay-per-view. And it got me thinking about wrestling pay-per-view names. I mean, what sets apart a WrestleMania or a Starrcade from a Fastlane or a Bunkhouse Stampede? And so I decided to list what I thought were the 10 dumbest pay-per-view names that I could find. Now, I should point out, this only pertains to the name of the pay-per-view, and not necessarily the format of the pay-per-view or the matches that were on the pay-per-view, because even a badly named pay-per-view can still be entertaining if the wrestling's good. So, with that, I present to you
the top 10 dumbest wrestling pay-per-view names. Number 10, WCW Capital Combat and WWE Capital Punishment.
Yeah, I know I'm fudging a little bit by starting things off with two pay-per-views, but they share a similar motif. I mean, when you're giving the name Capital to something you intend to be a yearly event, you're really limiting the amount of locations that you can show this thing. And while it would be entertaining to have my hometown of Bismarck, North Dakota host a pay-per-view, I just don't think that would fly over very well in the rest of the world.
Number 9, WCW Uncensored.
You know, back when TNA Wrestling was founded, it was thought that because they could only get distribution on pay-per-view, they could get away with a little bit more pertaining to sexual content. So yeah, it was going to be T&A Wrestling. And I have to wonder if the same thought process was being applied to WCW's Uncensored pay-per-view. Well, gee, it's on pay-per-view, we could get away with anything we want. Not understanding that, yeah, even pay-per-view still has to obey certain broadcast standards.
Number 8, ECW.
Wait, let me finish.
ECW, December to Dismember.
That's right, we're going with WWE ECW, not the original. Although, back with the original ECW, there was a pay-per-view called November to Remember. And while that one just seemed to have a nice roll off the tongue, December to Dismember just sounded forced and contrived. Well, gee, it's hardcore wrestling. Therefore, it's a December to Dismember. Wow, that's just really patronizing.
Number 7, TNA Hard Justice, aka TNA Hardcore Justice.
Yeah, that's right. The previously mentioned TNA Wrestling, the group that thought they could get away with what was essentially porno wrestling, tried to have a pay-per-view with hard or hardcore as part of their title. Real original, guys.
Number 6, WCW Slamboree and TNA Slammiversary.
Two terribly forced pun pay-per-view names. I mean, Slamboree, that just sounds like a terrible name for a wrestling-themed daycare center. And Slammiversary, that's just anniversary with slam added to it. And now, let's take a look at a couple that missed the cut.
WCW World War Three. This would have been on the list because of the whole 3-ring battle royale format, but since I was trying to limit this down to bad pay-per-view names and not formats, it missed the list. WWE Over the Limit. What limit? WCW Sin and WCW Greed. Yeah, I could do a whole list of just bad Vince Russo pay-per-views, but I decided to limit it down to just one. Number 5, WCW New Blood Rising.
The fact that at the time, WCW's New Blood versus Millionaires Club storyline had pretty much run its course. I mean, heck, guys who had started out in the Millionaires Club were now part of the New Bloods, even though the Millionaires Club were supposed to be the older wrestlers and thus couldn't be construed as new blood. Not only that, but the fact that the initial promos for this had the logo oozing green blood, yeah, that makes it worthy of being on the list in my book.
Number 4, WWE Bragging Rights.
You know, the Survivor Series has been a November tradition for the WWE since 1987. And then this came along, Bragging Rights, which was meant to replace the Survivor Series. And the fact of the matter is, this thing would have already been obsolete because they ended the brand extension, which was the whole point of the Bragging Rights motif to begin with.
Number 3, WWF It's Time, in your house.
It's time for what exactly? Okay, yeah, I know. This was part of Vader's catchphrase in the WWE, but Vader wasn't even part of the main event of this pay-per-view, so why did you name it after him?
Number 2, WCW Sold Out.
Yeah, you know it's bad when WCW changed the name of their January pay-per-view to Sin, and that was considered an improvement. And let's not even get started on the whole fact that the first incarnation of this pay-per-view had the NWO riding garbage trucks into an arena that was almost entirely painted black and white.
And the number 1 dumbest wrestling pay-per-view name is... WCW Hog Wild, aka WCW Road Wild.
Ah, yes. WCW's annual trip to the Sturgis Biker Rally, a pay-per-view that netted them no money in ticket sales because they didn't charge for the event. You'd think that alone would warrant a number 1 spot on this list, but let's not also forget the fact that they had to change the name from Hog Wild to Road Wild because of a trademark violation with the Harley-Davidson Company. And if your pay-per-view name results in a lawsuit, you really deserve to be number 1 on this list. And, well, that brings our journey to an end. I'd like to thank you all for watching and see you next time.